All right.
So I think just as you're taking seats, we need to congratulate you all as sort of being the group at one of these events who has stuck with us for the full day. So all of the presenters who are coming up in this last session just wanted me to extend my thanks for the fact that they're actually talking to a full room rather than a somewhat depleted room. So the lunchtime attrition didn't happen, so thank you for that. The benefit we have now, we've got our last few presenters to go through. We have had during the day and through the question time, some of our other conveners have said, oh, so-and-so panel might have something to say on this. So for all of those guys who are about to speak, don't hold back. If you have something to comment on something that's been said earlier, feel free to put in your comment, and that's one of the benefits of going last. You get the final say. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to talk to us about C4. I feel as if we already know so much about C4 because everyone else has referred to it today. Over to you, Andrew.
Yes, that's the problem with going last, or towards the end anyway. So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andrew Halley. I'm the Principal Operations Engineer at Tas Networks down in Tassie. And I'm also very pleased to be the panel convener for C4 at the present time. I took over in 2016 and got a few years to run. So just a quick update or reminder of what C4 is all about. I like to think C4 is sort of the pivot point for CIGRE. We bring all the bits that the other panels offer, whether it be equipment or learnings or whatever. We bring it all together and actually make it work. Then we hand it to C2 to operate. So that's the lens that I look through when I'm thinking about my panel. Anyway, on a serious note, the subtopics that we deal with within C4 are power quality, electromagnetic compatibility and interference, insulation coordination, lightning, and my personal favourite, because it's what I do, power system dynamics and numerical analysis. If you think about the change that's going on in the power system at the moment with the change of generation technologies, the introduction of DER, all of those, perhaps not lightning, are being affected in one way or another. Certainly the power quality and the power system dynamics, it's really been turned on its head. So there's a lot of work going on within C4, a lot of very interesting work. This presentation really concentrates on the Australian contribution to those activities. I could be up here for the next 2 hours if I tried to talk about everything. So before I forget, if you are interested in the broader activities of C4, have a read of the annual report. They'll be published soon, and the C4 report has got everything in it. So go to that document, have a read, and if there's any questions that come up, send me an email or give me a ring, and happy to talk through it. So what is going on in C4? Well, the answer is lots. We've got 35 active working groups in progress at the moment. The breakup of those is as follows. There's 5 in the power quality area, 5 in EMC, 7 and 7, and then the big one is actually the power system dynamics and numerical analysis. So there's 11 active working groups in that space at the moment, and a lot of it's been driven by those changes that I alluded to at the beginning. I'm not going to go through all 35 and tell you what's going on. What I've done is summarise my reading list. These are the working groups that I'm actually looking forward to reading the technical brochure output when it's published. So I thought I'd share that as a good way of just summarising. So the first one is revisions to the IEC technical reports, the 61000 series. Anyone that deals with the national electricity rules on a daily basis will be familiar with those standards. Sarath Pereira, who's in the audience here, is on that working group. I believe it's getting close to being wound up. Yep, I'm getting a nod. So look out for that one soon. Power system resilience, it's already been mentioned a couple of times. We've got Julian Eccleston from the AEMC representing us on that working group. I suppose the lens that we're looking at resilience through, or looking at that particular issue through, is saying, well, okay, the uncertainty levels within the power system are growing. Okay, there's more stuff that we don't have direct control over, that perhaps we haven't got visibility of. How do we actually manage that from a power system security review perspective? So the response of DER to fault events is one example. You know, are we talking about losing a 660 megawatt generator due to a fault, or are we talking about losing a 660 megawatt generator plus a couple of hundred megawatts of PV as well, due to the voltage disturbance that gets invoked because of that fault event? So they're the sorts of things that we're looking at within C4, and the AEMC in particular have taken a real interest, so that's great. C456, this is actually Babak's working group, so he's the convener from AEMO. Electromagnetic transient simulation models, well, again, anyone that's involved in, as a consultant or as a network service provider in the connection of new generation. This is now BAU, EMT simulations, EMT models, getting hold of them, validating them, all that sort of stuff is just what we have to do now to make sure that when we connect that type of technology, we've still got a viable power system at the end of it. Very relevant for Australia, it's obvious. This one got mentioned in A1. This is the working group, it's a joint working group with A1 and C4. Guide on the assessment, specification and design of syncons. Synchronous condensers are back. You know, they were an almost forgotten technology. They are here, and people are putting them in reasonably large numbers. Probably as a similar thing as Russell might have said with the cables, people are talking about syncons, but they perhaps haven't come up to speed with what the latest issues are, and what you can actually do with a properly specified synchronous condenser. You know, you've got to understand what you want it to do and what problem you're trying to solve before you actually go and place an order. It's good to get it in that sequence rather than the other way around. So that working group's looking at providing that guidance, which is again pertinent to what's going on in here in Oz. And the last one there, impact of low inertia network on protection and control. Again, we're seeing reduction in fault levels. We're seeing the connection of more power electronic interface generation that's got a very different fault current profile to the good old synchronous machines that we've been used to. The way we approach network protection needs to change and needs to be brought up to date to cater for that. So that's my reading list. By all means, go and have a look at the other 30 working groups that are in progress and build your own, but they're the interesting ones for me. Just as a side note, one of the things that we're very proud of within C4 is that the participation of the other half of the population is very high within the working groups. We have the highest number of ladies involved in active working groups, and it's something that we're very much looking to promote and continue with. There's absolutely no reason why we can't be leveraging off the experience that the female employees out there have got. They should be involved. Right, so in terms of what we've published since this update last year, there's been 5. I won't go through them in detail. C2, the joint working group C2, C4 on power system stability control's already been mentioned. Network modelling for harmonic studies, that was led by a friend of mine in Ireland from CIGRE. That's a really good document just to give, if you're not sort of totally familiar with how to go about doing harmonic studies in the network, that's a good starting point. It's been well written, it's plain English, and you know, it'll give you a really good guide as to what to do and what the issues are. So I'd recommend that one. Understanding of the geomagnetic storm environment, that's one I was actually a member of. That's a great read. I think someone mentioned the event before. It's actually 1859. It was called the Carrington event, and we talk about that within this technical brochure as just what a solar flare at the wrong time and in the wrong place in space can actually do to our power systems. It's quite frightening. So another good read. And the last one, the impact on soil parameter frequency dependence. Not across the details of that one, so by all means, if that's something that you're interested in, go and have a read. I've already mentioned that all these details are in the annual report. Just moving on to other publications, one of the ones I was really proud of to be involved with as a reviewer this year was a feature article that we had published in the CIGRE Science and Engineering Journal. It was a publication or an article that was put together by AEMO in conjunction with Electronet. It was titled The Use of Battery Energy Storage Systems for System Integrity Protection Schemes in the South Australian Power System. So remembering that the Science and Engineering Journal is an international publication, so the whole world got to actually read about this, and it was received very positively, and been a lot of follow-up questions as to who wrote it and what comes next and so forth. So if you didn't notice it and perhaps haven't read it, go and have a read. It's a really good document. The other one that was published as an Electra article was, or a reference paper, was defining power system resilience, and that's one of the first outputs from the working group C447. The other things that C4 have been working on is actually utilising the webinar approach, trying to get information out there in a format that's a bit easier to maybe engage with and perhaps a bit more interesting than just a written document. So we've had 3 webinars this year. Again, I won't go through the details, but just to give you an indication of how popular they've been, we've had 64 attendees and 112 attendees for the middle one that Koji run on modelling of inverter generation. This seems to be quite a good format and something that we'll certainly be continuing with as a study committee to help get information out there in a timely way and just engage with the broader membership base. That picture there has absolutely nothing to do with webinars. That's probably one of the most well photographed offshore substations in Europe. That was the one that we went and saw at the Danish symposium, so it's a photo that I took. That's the Anholt wind farm, 400 megawatts. And I put it there simply to remind myself to mention that one of the benefits of being involved in CIGRE is obviously that you get access not only to a heap of written material and a lot of documentation, but if you're actively involved in CIGRE, you get to go to interesting places, see interesting things, talk to interesting people, and I can't speak highly enough of just how valuable that actually is. So if you're new to CIGRE or NGN member today here, get involved. It's all good. There's no downsides to being involved, other than you might have a little bit less spare time than you had previously. Paris session, C4, we've had 7 synopses accepted. Hopefully they all turn into papers and they actually become accepted papers. I think that the number of papers that we've had accepted simply demonstrates the sorts of issues that we're experiencing in Australia and I suppose how well they fit into the scope of C4, so low system inertia, low system strength, frequency control issues, modelling issues, introduction of BESS, battery energy storage systems for doing other things beyond just simply storing megawatt hours. So it's a really good contribution, and I'm thankful for those that have put up synopsis and had them accepted. The preferential subjects I won't bother going through, but essentially it's our usual cohort of topics around models, the future grid, and then lightning, power quality and installation coordination under PS3. I just want to highlight the papers that have been accepted. and as I said, will hopefully turn into full papers. Yep, so we can read them reasonably well there. So thank you to the lead authors. Some of them are in the audience today. I wanted to put it up just simply to demonstrate, again, the breadth of topics and the sorts of topics that we deal with, and that Australia is actually able to contribute to, and in some cases actually lead very well because of our experience. So we've got Neil there with trends in power quality disturbance compatibility within Australia and our learnings. You know, we start then talking about the tools that we've developed and continue to develop to support the connection of renewables. Connection of wind farms with synchronous condensers, that'll be a really interesting one. Greg's got one in there from on the geomagnetically induced currents across the Australian national electricity market. So that'll be an interesting paper, I'm sure. Babak's got a couple in there, again, very much tied to the issues that AEMO's dealing with at an M level. And the one I'm actually really interested in getting hold of and reading and reviewing is the one from Tony. Generator fault current injection. Are system operators asking for the right thing? I don't know whether he's baiting us, or I'm going to be really interested to see where he goes with that topic. It is an interesting topic, and yeah, I just think it's a really good example of how we're all still learning. Okay, we're making decisions and going forward on certain topics using the best information and knowledge that we've got, but that's not to say that we can't do it better, and CIGRE is a great place to bring out those new ideas and sometimes ask the hard questions. So that'll be a good paper, I reckon. Just to bring you into the loop on something else that's happening in Paris. We've been invited, or the Australian panel has been invited to prepare a workshop which will be titled System Strength, Concepts and Associated Technical Issues for Networks Having a High Penetration of Power Electronic Interface Generating Systems. It's a very long title, but I think you get the gist of it. We've been asked to put it together based on our experiences here in Australia and the fact that we are leading pretty much all of the big systems when it comes to management of system strength and the need to actively manage it. So Babak and I are going to be putting together the workshop. We're going to be certainly drawing on the experience from a lot of other international speakers, but we've been asked to coordinate it and put it together. So the sorts of things we're going to be talking about and trying to explain in that workshop are what we actually mean by system strength. There's been various analogies developed by people. Some of them are reasonable, some of them are not so reasonable. So we'll have a go at actually defining it. We're going to be talking about local versus system-wide system strength issues, how system strength actually manifests itself as a problem if the system isn't maintained at a certain level, if there's not enough synchronous plant or equivalents available in the system. Tools and techniques for analysing those conditions. So again, this sort of comes back to the simulation side of things. How do you actually analyse that sort of system? What are the tools and types of models that you need to do it properly and do it well? Some obviously draw on some practical examples of where that's been done and the sorts of issues that have been seen in the physical system and how those issues have been mitigated, and so on. So as I said, both myself and Babak are going to be coordinating that, and you might be sitting there thinking, well, great, Andrew's going to be doing that in Paris, how do I get access to this hopefully good information? Well, we're hoping, very much planning to actually use the Australian membership base as a bit of a test bed. We're going to do a dry run basically in May or June. We're still working out dates next year. So we won't have the international speakers. We'll have to substitute them with local experts, which won't be a problem, or we don't believe it'll be a problem. And the idea is that we We run it as a local event, probably co-badged with AEMO and CIGRE. So that's the thinking at this point in time. But Back and I will have some sort of guitar case or something at the front of the room, and the idea is that it'll be entry by donation. We'd like to upgrade our flights from economy to business class, and this seems like one reasonable way of trying to fund that. So look out for that. It'll be advertised once we've actually got all the details sorted, and yeah, hopefully it's an interesting event and put some of the myths around system strength to bed once and for all. Just to finish then, just a quick summary of the panel meeting that we held up here in Brizzy in late August. Energy Queensland hosted, and very thankful for that. We had a closed panel meeting on the Thursday with 24 attendees, which was a really good turnout. Peter Price was good enough, kind enough to give us 15 minutes of his time and do the opening, which was very informative and very much appreciated. So that was just our normal panel session. And then on the Friday we had an open technical seminar, which we opened up to whoever wanted to come along. So we had between 30 and 35 attendees over the course of the day, and we went through, I think it was 7 or 8 papers there that I won't bother reading, but it gives you an idea of the sorts of topics that we talked through. And it was a really fantastic day. The presentations from Energy Queensland in particular were extremely interesting. It just makes you realise how big the distribution network in Queensland actually is, how many issues there are to manage, and just how well they're going about doing it. It was really quite inspiring, to be honest. So thanks to Peter and Alan for their contributions. Yeah, so it was a good 2 days. With that, I'll call it quits and hand over, and happy to take questions, which I'm sure there'll be something at the end. And that picture there is the wind farm that we actually went and had a look at at the end of the Danish symposium. So that's just an aerial shot. It was absolutely amazing. These things, to see them on land is one thing, to actually see them at sea and be driving out through, floating out through this wind farm. It was really, really quite something. So anyway, thank you.